Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Seems like it's been forever at this point, but we're back. The Canadian Bowler Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lucas Caldwell, and I'm here with my wonderful, wonderful co-host, Daryl Fitzgerald. Daryl, how you doing today?
Hi, Luke. Hi, everybody. It's good to be back. I mean, it's January 30th. I had to look at the date.
When's the last time we recorded one of these? I don't even remember now.
It had to be before the Christmas holidays for sure.
Yeah, well, we're back for episode number 23, the Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. So we're gonna have to try and make this one live up to the expectations, I suppose, Daryl.
Right.
Just before we get into this one, guys, remember, like, subscribe, comment, share, hit that little notification bell just in case you miss our posts on Facebook. If you're not available to watch it, I know we got a message from one of our wonderful followers saying that they couldn't watch the show today. Don't forget, we're available after on YouTube, and we're also on every major podcast platform, with that being Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and literally wherever else you can find a podcast, you'll find us. And yeah, so that's out there for everybody.
That's right.
And I can't believe it, Daryl. There's actually Bulls to talk about for the first time in a year. At least a year.
It's incredible, Luke. I wasn't sure when we'd actually get to talk about Bulls that actually happened recently, not past stuff, not what we wanted in the future, not kind of figuring out what's going on as far as the pandemic, but actual Bulls.
Yeah, and the exciting part I think about it is it's not, no disrespect, but it's not just the interstate Australian stuff that we've been seeing going on for years. We actually got to see some international play, which was nice. And it was at the Potters Resort, which is always a wonderful event for spectators and for players.
That's right. You want to kick it off with that?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go for it.
All right. The Just World Indoor Bowls Championships for 2021 happened. I'll just list off the winners. I'm going to need my notes just to make sure. Mark Dawes played phenomenal the whole time. He won the open singles, and he won the open pairs with Jamie Chesney. Jamie Chesney is also a phenomenal bowler. If you know anything about the World Bowls Tour, those guys are always in the mix. The ladies' match play was won by Laura Daniels. She played Catherine Rednall in the final. It was kind of a rematch of their previous encounter in the same event in 2019, I believe it was. Or no, maybe it was even farther back than that. Anyway, two phenomenal bowlers in their own right, playing off, and Laura Daniels came on top on that. And then in the mixed pairs, it was Julie Forrest and Stuart Anderson. Again, we can say the same thing again. Two phenomenal bowlers, and we could probably go right up and down the listing of the people in this event. All great bowlers.
I'm just curious. I'm going to be honest with our viewers. I don't really watch a whole lot of bowls. I know Daryl's more into watching it than me. Do you know how these players were selected to play here? Like, was there qualifiers or something, or was it just kind of whoever wanted to show up?
It was invitational only.
Okay.
This time around, they didn't have qualifiers. There was no international people. When we talk about a world championship, it is the name of the event, but it almost felt like the World Series of baseball, where it's not really a World Series because it's only the U.S. and Canada with the Toronto Blue Jays in baseball. Right. It was mainly the U.K. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's to be expected. I mean, just with the whole pandemic, it's probably a little hard to get people from far and wide. So,
yeah, I mean, I did see a lot of talk on the forums, on Facebook, talking about, oh, why are these people in here? Why was it selections and no qualifiers? This doesn't really feel fair to everybody else. It's understandable, but the World Bowls Tour is putting on their event. They're trying to get the first one in a number of years going. And, you know, you can argue that there's some maybe missing players that are really excellent and should have a shot. But the players in there were very, very, very good and are often in those events anyway.
Another thing that I just wanted to touch on quickly, that I thought was actually quite interesting and shocking about it, was when me, you, and Michael Patulli found out that there was actually sports betting on this event. I mean, I didn't even know that existed in bowls until 2 weeks ago. So I thought that was actually quite interesting.
All of our fans overseas probably knew, especially in the UK and maybe in Australia, that there's betting on bowls, but it's not really prevalent here. The highest things for betting are like things, well, major league sports like baseball, basketball, football, soccer, or European football if you want to talk about it in North America, and fighting like
Yeah.
boxing and MMA and those kind of things.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, being a gambling man myself a little bit, I thought it was. I just thought it was interesting. It's nothing that I would ever have thought about betting on, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that if you ever wanted to. I know Mike actually made a little bit of money on a couple matches over there, so I thought that was kind of neat.
Hey, you're betting on some of the best in the world. It can sometimes be a little bit of a gamble, kind of like golf. When you if you bet on golf, you can bet on the best player, but there's 100 other players just waiting to come up and take that number one spot.
Hey, I'm telling you right now, though, if the betting scene got bigger for bowls, it's got to be one of the best sports to make money on because sometimes the lowest ranked player beats the best ranked player, and that happens more often than not in bowls, I think, than any other sport.
That could be fun. I wonder if any of our viewers, especially overseas, if you do gamble on bowls, how much harder or easier is it than trying to bet on other sports?
Yeah, for sure. I guess moving forward, we touched on the pandemic a little bit. Were you shocked at all, Daryl, that they had this run amidst the pandemic?
I'll be perfectly honest. At first, when I heard that the World Bowls Tour was going to throw an event, that goes through my mind where it's like, well, how are they going to run it? Are they going to have testing? Are the people going to be safe? And uh, are the interests of the players and spectators and, well, in this case, it wasn't spectators, but um, umpires and officials and the people who are running the event, are they going to be safe? So
Yeah.
it did come up in my mind. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little shocked too. I mean, just from what I've read and seen online, I feel like they did a pretty good job with it. They obviously must have had some sort of rapid testing system available because they had the two gentlemen who were removed due to positive COVID tests. So they must have had a pretty decent setup. And I know whenever they did their interviews, they had them spaced out with masks on. So, I mean, they must have done a pretty decent job.
Yeah. Uh, John Simon saying here, it was much easier to run the event at Potter's considering it was a contained compound on the resort. They did lots to alter the way they ran it to ensure safety the whole way. And that was true. You kind of saw while they were playing, no other player touched another player's bowls. The jack was being replaced, that kind of thing. No spectators, obviously. And like you said, they must have had some rapid testing because they caught the two positive cases, and that was kind of strange because it actually altered the draw where two semifinalists were going to compete were knocked out, and Mark Dawes, who was the eventual winner, kind of leapfrogged into the final.
Yeah, definitely interesting for sure. I mean, I'm sure it could have caused a little bit of controversy, but I mean, it's just the way it goes. I mean, I don't even know how else you would have attempted to rework a draw. So,
That was good, and I think in that case, kind of like something we watch, which is MMA, the UFC, it's a contained event. It's a contained organization. They can make sure that their protocols are in place. They can hold it at Potter's, which is a contained kind of thing. So it seemed like everything was on the up and up. Everything kind of ran well, and hopefully there's absolutely no fallout other than the two positive cases. And obviously, Luke and I hope that those two gentlemen have no other effects than just being tested positive.
Yeah, I mean, a big shout out to the World Bowls Tour who threw that on, because they obviously did a pretty decent job. So, I mean, good on them, and thanks for putting bowls out there for us and for everybody else's viewing purposes. I know, my dad was sitting at home, and I'd call him up from time to time, and he's always sitting there watching it on TV. So,
One of the big things leading into this was that the returning world champ and the internet darling, I guess you could call him, Nick Brett, was out of the match. Apparently, he slipped playing golf and landed on his right hand, so he couldn't play.
that's too bad. We would have got another sensational Nick Brett clip.
It's just unfortunate. I will say, he did a fantastic job on the commentary. So shout out Nick Brett on moving up into the commentary box for this event and doing a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, at least he was able to be part of that in some way, because obviously, I mean, I don't know how much of a staple he was before, but he's got to be a big part of it now.
He is, absolutely. I wanted to ask you a question because, as people know, we're trying to grow this channel, and we look at numbers, we look at what videos are doing well, how our analytics are doing as far as viewers and subs and all that kind of stuff. The World Bowls Tour had nobody in attendance, and usually they have, I think they quoted as somewhere around 20,000 people watching when they have an event like this going, or in attendance. Their viewership numbers went way up on Facebook and YouTube. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. I mean, the first time I ever even noticed they streamed it, I remember one day, this is going back a couple years, I was at work, and I happened to see that they were streaming, and you see all these comments from people who have no idea what it is and have no idea why this popped up on their feed. So I feel like, I don't know if they promote it or pay for sponsored posts or whatnot, but I feel like the World Bowls tour always actually has a pretty good viewership number, surprisingly. The fact that they had larger viewership numbers this year, to me, isn't overly shocking. I feel like every sort of sport where they're moved to no fans and nothing, I just feel like there'd be more eyeballs on it because there's nothing else out there. And I feel like we've talked about it before, the bowls community just wants bowls so bad. People like almost live and die for it, right? So it's, to me, it's the first big event back, and so no, to me, it's not shocking that there's more eyes on it than before.
No, I'd agree with you. It wasn't shocking. People are starved for bowls. We do get the Australia streams of state and pennant, I think, and some club events based on which club actually has the technology to do it. But as far as like a world top tier kind of championship level kind of thing, we haven't had that in quite some time. So I definitely was interested. I was working most of the time when it was on because of the time zone difference, but I always had it on another screen, listening to it, checking out any big shots that were happening. So I definitely was hooked.
John Siteman says he's not surprised at all either, especially with the lockdowns in the UK. He said it was interesting to see the different players in the open singles. A little can't speak today, but yeah, it definitely was interesting. And he said Catherine Rendall, which obviously is an exciting story in itself. She was able to take down who I'm probably going to call the best player, arguably the best player of all time, definitely the best, probably the fan favorite best player that's still active. So that's definitely a giant story, and that also leads into the whole inclusivity aspect of bowls. What do you think about that, Daryl?
For those of you who haven't checked it out, we do have an After Dark that we just did earlier in January. It was our first show back. Check that out on our YouTube channel. We actually had a little bit of a talk about open events. Everybody plays everybody, regardless of gender or anything like that. So just a full blanket, you play who you play, and the best player out of the whole group wins. And in this case, it just went to show you that the best player on the day will win. Catherine Rednall beat Alex Marshall, and for me that was a big story. Whether however the game went and whatever happened in the game, at the end she won, and she deserves recognition for that as being one of the probably one of the first to do something like that, or at least in this event, having being able to knock off some big names.
Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting just to see. I mean, we've, like you said, we've talked about it in the past, and in the sport of bowls, it's one of those things where anybody can play against anybody. There's no advantages to being physically fit, or not fit, but physically stronger than your opponent, other than like maybe being able to throw a drive a little bit harder than the other person. But in, let's just say, 85% of the situations, you never really have to throw an absolute bullet down the green to get the result. And I feel like you don't even really have to throw drives ever if you don't want to. So I don't really see a massive difference, and why not everyone can play against everybody. And I guess it also leads into the conversation about here in Canada, with the numbers being as low as they are at the moment. Like, why isn't there more open events?
And we had that conversation a little bit in the past show, but I know in the past I've had conversations with people about doing something like that, where you throw everybody's name in, the draw happens however the draw happens, male female is not split at all, or any gender differentiation, and best player comes out. But there are some men and there are some women that don't want to play against the opposite gender.
For sure. I mean, it's like that in every sport, so it's not shocking that we have that in bowls. I mean, me personally, I think it would work perfectly fine. I have no problem playing against a man or a female or whatever it be. So, like, I think it could totally happen. I think it could uh, probably stop a few other arguments around that space, whether it become in the money aspect with funding and whatnot. So I think it could. I think it could be a good thing if someday it went in that direction.
Well, I think you're seeing it in bowls where the levels are starting to equal out. Like, it may not have been that way in the past, but I'll just make an example of, say, the women's team in Canada, and we talk about it. They've done better and better and better every year that they go along, and they have all the skills that any other bowler would want, whether it's, you know, having the draw or having the drive or being able to play the shots that matter, whether it's throwing an absolute bullet like Ryan Bester or something a little bit less. You can still get the result out of it, and I'm all for having a try at doing something like that, where it's just an open draw. I know that there are a couple of things out there that do something like this, like the I think it's the OBA singles in Burlington kind of does that. It's just a wide open singles event, but it would be great to see, because I think the proof is in the pudding. You try it a few times and you're going to see some really great results, and some probably unexpected results.
And I think I don't know what it's like at a lot of clubs, but I know here in Peterborough we always had men and women separate leagues, like league nights. We didn't have jitneys, we had leagues, and eventually they had to go to where it was a mixed league. And I thought it was pretty fun, even at the club level, just because some of the women are incredible bowlers and some of the men are incredible bowlers. So it's kind of neat just to kind of see everybody play against everybody. And like we've said so much in the past, like in bowls, anybody can beat anybody. It doesn't matter if you're 12 years old or 95 or male or female, strong or out of shape or in shape, whatever you want to, whatever it may be. I just think it's so interesting how anybody can play against anybody.
And I think that leads to a great conversation about just bowls being inclusive. It's a great sport, and I wish more people would see it, especially during this time, as a sport that we can social distance with, as you saw with the World Bowls Tour. You know, people on opposite ends, you can space people apart on the rinks and maybe not play every rink right next to each other. You can have protocols in place at the club to make sure everybody is safe and clean all the equipment. fairly easily because the jack is a hard surface, the mat is rubber, so it's not like you're going to damage it by like soaking it in disinfectant or doing something like that. And overall, even without the pandemic, it's such a great sport for anybody and everybody, age, gender, uh, race, religion, it doesn't matter. Come out and play. It's just for everybody. That's kind of the message that I hope more people would hear.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before the show, but I think you really said it perfect. And just the marketability of the sport is so underused. It's just a massive misstep that nobody's ever really taken full advantage of. Just because literally anybody can play. Like we've said so many times, like it's multi-generational. Like you could play with your great grandparents if they're can play. You can play with your dad. You can play with your children. You can play with literally anybody at any time, and you can play at the highest level with anybody. Which is such an incredible thing for that. And I think there is definitely a way to grow the sport with the whole marketing aspect, just because there is so many things about it that could draw the people who not necessarily have something like that, because I've never been able to go play competitive hockey with my dad just because simply our age difference or anything like that. What other sport have you been able to go play at the highest level you possibly could with your dad or your grandpa, for that
Exactly.
matter?
I could
Or
probably count them on one hand.
bowls?
Yeah.
Maybe mixed curling. I don't even know if that's a thing. But like I said, there's not really any high level or competitive mixed hockey leagues other than aside from maybe like beer league on a Sunday night. But I just think that could blow the sport up to another level if it was ever marketed correctly.
And I mean, it does come down to the perception. It's an old person's sport. It's something that we constantly try to break. Because as you can see, I mean, I'm older than Luke, but we're not super old. And we have people in the chat who are even younger than us. It's a sport for everybody. And I know it's sad that when people come and play, and I talk to them afterwards, after they've had maybe a few sessions or just come out and rolled a few, they're like, I wish I found this 10 years ago.
I feel like that's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Like literally everybody says it.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because, just getting people out and trying, I guarantee you're going to get hooked. I'm sure Luke is too, but I'm a huge sports fan. I love all the major sports, soccer, football, basketball, baseball. I watch a lot of it. And I also watch other sports like MMA and what have you. It doesn't take away my love for the sport of bowls and the fact that I play it all the time. It's just unfortunate that we need to crack that to get just some critical mass over it to say, try the sport out and start spreading it amongst your friends and get that kind of buzz going.
Yeah, it's just such a tough thing to break into. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say about it. It's just such a tough thing.
I wanted to touch on this. This is kind of a side conversation to what we were just talking about, but there is a podcast in the UK called Wrong Bias. We'll call them a sister podcast over on that side of the pond. They had a great conversation about the marketing of female bowlers in bowls, and specifically this was around Catherine Rednall beating Alex Marshall in relation to their dart scene, which is big. And I'll just get the name right. Fallon Sherrock, who is a darts player over there, and she was, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe she was the first female dart player to win at a world event or a major international event and beat one of the male competitors. And she was marketed through the roof with this stuff, and you saw her on articles and doing a whole bunch of stuff. Did anybody hear about Catherine Rednall beating Alex Marshall other than those that watched?
Probably not. I mean, I heard it through the grapevine, but it wasn't like there was these big giant posts in the Bulls world. I mean, I'm hoping that the big Bulls magazines that we do have, whenever they get published on this, they have something about it. But other than that, no, there's not a whole lot out there.
Yeah, and I was surprised because that's a huge opportunity, not just for World Bowls Tour, but for World Bowls and Bowls England possibly. because she's an English player, promote that and market that and say, giant killer, Catherine Rednall, beat Alex Marshall in the World Bowls Tour. Some of the articles I did see, the headline and the picture was Alex Marshall loses with a picture of him, and then kind of the subtext under that was that Catherine Rednall beat him. It should have been Catherine Rednall beats Alex Marshall with a picture of her, and she did it. The remarkable thing, which wasn't talked about, she did it. I think she was like 7.5 months pregnant.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, obviously, from other announcements, my wife is pregnant, and I can see the day-to-day stuff she goes through. I couldn't imagine having to bowl in a major competition when you're 7.5 months pregnant.
Yeah, against the best players in the world.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it could be interesting. But like we just said, it just goes to show that literally anybody can play against anybody.
Oh, absolutely. So chat, if you have opinions on this kind of stuff, if you have thoughts about the World Bowls Tour, what they did, how the event went, even some of the matches, if you have matches that you really, really enjoyed that you want to share with the rest of them, make sure you throw it in the comments, tweet it out there, do that kind of stuff, promote the game, throw it in our chat, in our comments, so that we can even go and take a look as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I haven't watched much of it at all, so I wouldn't be upset for any advice on which ones to watch.
It looks like Andy's. Do we know Andy?
No, never heard of him.
Bowls is such a great sport to get a full cardio workout, playing a game, and you don't realize you're doing it, and that's true.
Yeah, it's true. If you have a smartwatch or a Fitbit or even have your phone in your pocket, like most people do, I think, how many steps you take just over the course of even just one game or over the course of a tournament day, it's pretty nuts, actually, how far you walk. And it's not like it's overly strenuous on your body by any means, just walking up and down the green all day.
Yeah. And there's so many great things about bowls that I think people just don't realize. But just at the end of the day, it's such a fun game to play. Really.
Yep. I guess I have a question for you, Daryl.
All right.
Not about anything we've talked about, really. Do you think there will be competitive bowls in Canada in 2021?
I wish that was an easy question. I'll say yes, but I will say I'm not sure it will be national. Does that make sense?
Yep. I guess I'll answer my own question. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and just say no. I don't think there will be. And I asked this question just because we recently found out that Bowls USA has canceled the Daryl knows this better than me. It was the U.S. Open in California and the Nationals in Milwaukee, I believe.
That's right.
So that was interesting to see. I mean, obviously, we're in a slightly better state with the pandemic than the United States. I'd like to be optimistic, but I think just safety reasons, I think it would be smart if they just straight up said no, especially at the national level. I think inter-province could definitely be possible, especially in some of the smaller provinces or the provinces that don't have a whole lot of cases, like in Nova Scotia. I think it's definitely possible. Like if Nova Scotia was to run some sort of Atlantic Challenge, excluding Quebec, just because Quebec has been hit nearly as hard as we have here in Ontario at the moment. So I think that something like that could definitely happen. Again, I could see interprovincial play happening in places like Ontario, BC, Saskatchewan. Just speaking at my personal knowledge, I think it would be tough here in Ontario just because there's so many areas that are so we have areas that are impacted heavily and areas that are impacted almost not at all. So I think it would just be tough to have a total provincial wide event.
Yeah. And I can probably just state the exact same things that you did. The the craziness just keeps opening the farther you get. So you've got local, which might be okay based on numbers in your local area and clubs and how your municipalities and stuff are dealing with the pandemic. And then when you get to provincial, it's a little harder because I know in Ontario and Quebec, like you said, it's the numbers aren't good. And then when you get to national, do you really want to take the chance of mixing heavily hit provinces with those that are actually doing quite well?
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. Me and you personally, just talking about the whole bubble thing for competitor. I see Cam McClend. Sorry if I butchered your name in the chat there. He's talked about the bubble, and I don't think that can happen here, simply because there's no money in bowls, and like I can't afford to take the 14 days off or whatever it is to go sit in a bubble in a hotel room somewhere for stuff like that to happen. So I think that's tough to do. And I think for me, I don't want to play a competitive championship against the people who are comfortable playing. I would rather it be where everybody can play and not have to have like people who maybe say yes to people who have had the vaccine. With that rolling out can happen. But for me personally, I'd like it to be back normal before I played in any sort of competition where I can play against everybody.
Yeah, and it'll be a tough sell to some people. Some people will have no problem. They've had no problem during the pandemic, doing a lot of stuff and feeling safe. And then there's others who don't want to have any contact with anybody because they're afraid of contracting the virus. And as you can see, at the World Bowls Tour event, 2 people tested positive. What's to say that wouldn't happen in any other event where you do a bubble? We watch the UFC and they do a ton of testing and a ton of stuff. They still have positive cases and fights get pulled all the time.
All the time. Yeah, and there's a lot more money in that too, and a lot more safety precautions in that than there's ever going to be in bowls. So
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Cam said it right there, where doing a bubble, and you said it too, can people afford to take that time off? Can people afford to isolate, to travel, and then sit in a hotel room for however long it's going to be, whether or not they have a vaccine? And do you have to be vaccinated before you can even sign up for the event?
And at the same time, I hate to bring it to the whole financial and money aspect of it, but if you're in what happens here in Canada, if you win, it's not like you really win a prize. So if I go and win the national championship, I have to spend all this money, and it's going to be extra money if something happens this year with the whole bubble aspect. Is it really worth it for most people's time? For me, no. Personally, no, it's not. So again, getting back to the question, I don't think it's going to happen. I would like to be optimistic, but at the same time, I just want to be kind of honest with myself, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I mean, eventually, once the vaccine is readily available for everybody, yeah, I think it could happen. But is that going to happen this year? Probably not.
Yeah, and I can't argue with that. It's going to be tough for a lot of people to make that kind of a decision, or be able to afford to make that kind of a decision. It's a tough road that our sport has, considering we are limited in our budget. We are whether it's national, provincial, or local. Clubs are not rolling around in money to have something happen and then have to deal with the consequences when something happens. So we usually have to take the road of better safe than sorry. Whether or not it could happen, does it make sense to happen, right?
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity for there to be, let's just call it competitive tournaments in small areas. Not saying that's impossible. I just don't think the large scale stuff's going to happen this year.
No, and I can see that. It's travel is so touchy, and going back to the U.S., it's not surprising for me to see that kind of stuff canceled. As John said, the U.S. situation is much different, as the U.S. Open is generally dependent on international players. Also, many of the California clubs are not even open. With all the stuff happening in the U.S., and you could take the pandemic out of it and look at presidential election, civil unrest, the whole gambit of stuff, and then you layer the pandemic on top of that. That's a tough sell for people to come over and try to play. I don't think you'd see any uptake.
Yeah, for sure.
So not surprising. One other item, I guess we can throw at other odds and ends, maybe.
Sure.
There was a nice article on Karen Murphy. For those of you who don't know, Karen Murphy is an Australian national. She no longer plays on the Jackaroos, but there was a good article, and if you look on it, it's on Yahoo, or at least that's where I found it. She talks about the sport lacking the push on inclusivity, and we talked about this earlier with men and women bowls, but this goes right through the whole gamut, whether it's disabilities of all kinds, age, cultures, whatever it is. Bowls is an inclusive sport, and it should be marketed as an inclusive sport. It's something that I don't see a lot of my friends, and I've got friends from a wide range of countries, religions, backgrounds, whatever. It's a tough sell to them because they don't see people like them playing, and it would be great to get them out there and playing, see the sport grow in all of our communities, and show that this sport can be played and enjoyed by absolutely everybody.
Yeah, and I know, like you said, we touched on it a little bit before. I guess with this conversation, we're stepping outside the gender thing and the age. And I'm just going to throw a little personal story in there. When I first started playing, I got asked to play with this other guy named Luke from my club, and he had Down syndrome, and he was my partner in our Monday Night League, and he was, I'm not even kidding you, one of the best bowlers I have ever played with in my entire life. So, like, again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And he was a great person to play with. We had a lot of fun, and he was incredible on the green. I don't know. I don't think he plays anymore, but it just goes to show you that literally anybody can play, and anybody can play with anybody, whether you're 10, 95, you have Down syndrome, autism, anything, doesn't even matter. You're male, female, any person of color, black, white, who cares? Anybody can play the sport with anybody. And again, that's another thing that's so great about the sport, is that anybody can play with anybody.
Absolutely. Another bit of news out of Australia. If you haven't heard, Steve Glasson, who is the head coach of the Australian Jackaroos, I say the whole Australian national side, stepped down recently, and they promoted Gary Willis. Sorry, the name just eluded me for a second. Gary Willis, who's been a longtime coach with Australia, but he is now their new head coach. So a little bit of a shake-up down under.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see that. I mean, I guess congratulations to Steve on an incredible career as a player and a coach. He's won so many medals and titles all across all of the events as a coach and as a player. And like you said, I've met Gary. I know him personally. He's seems like a great guy, great coach from what I've seen. So I think that that program's still going in the right direction with him at the helm.
Yeah, that's great to see. And promoting from within. It's nice to see someone get the recognition that they deserve. Gary is a great guy, and he's been a great coach for them, and it's good to see him take that next step up.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's John say here? Gary has been a star supporter behind the scenes, especially with Disco's singles run. So Disco is Aaron Wilson, for those that don't know his nickname. Between him and Andy Thompson, they'll be great. They'll be in great hands, and that's true. Andy Thompson is now heading up England as well.
Oh, wonderful.
I think that's what he was saying. Anyway, I may be wrong. Don't quote me on that. I think I'm getting my facts messed up. Anyway, that's right. Sorry, Andy, the the tactical coach for Australia. I'm getting him mixed up with the English Andy Thompson. Thanks, John, for
Oh.
the. We'll edit that out somewhere.
No, we're leaving that in. Editor, leave that in.
I hope you don't mind me doing this, but I wanted to take a moment to turn the show in, I guess, a little more of a serious point. We had Bell Let's Talk Day recently, a very important day in Canada, whether Bell is involved or not, but it really starts the conversations of mental health, removing the stigma of mental issues, depression, anxiety. I mean, I could go down a whole list of things that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's a great day to really spark up the conversations around issues that people are having, trying to get people to reach out for help where they need it. And this year, Bulls Canada released a video of one of the national players and someone that I know and Luke knows as well, David James Smith, talking about his struggles with depression and anxiety and even suicidal thoughts during his whole life, basically, and kind of looping in that even during competition and playing bowls at a high level, it affected him in a very serious way, and it looks like he's on the right path to getting help and finding his way to a more positive outlook and ending. And I urge every single one of you, if you can deal with some serious subject matter and some serious talk, check out Bulls Canada and check out the link to the Bell Let's Talk video that they posted for David James Smith.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Dave, somebody that I would call a friend. I actually reached out to him personally after I read this, and I said, Dave, I'm just going to say, pardon my French before I say this, or my language, but I said, Dave, you are one brave, crazy, badass motherfucker for coming out and sharing that story on the scale he did. And it's incredible that he was able to do that. I myself have dealt with anxiety and depression over the years, and some of his stories were like shockingly relatable for me personally. And there's no way that I can be the only person who can relate to those. And just like from my personal experiences, just being able to talk about it, whether it be the way he did it, or with your friend or your family or wherever, whatever support outlet that you have, it helps in a massive, massive way. And yeah, I think days like Bell Let's Talk Day are incredible for the whole mental health thing, because unfortunately, mental health is a massive, massive, massive problem that that the whole world deals with on an everyday basis. And I just want anybody out there who needs someone to talk to, myself personally, I'm sure Daryl can say the same. We're here to talk, whether I know you or not. I'm more than willing to have a conversation and try to help you the best I can. And just everyone, please don't be afraid to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, and Luke said it best. It's a great day, but it needs to be a discussion that happens throughout the whole year. I know Luke and I have had talks about our own issues as friends. We've talked to other people who are suffering with the same kind of things, whether it's anxiety, depression. It could be a lot of things, addiction. It's not something that you should have to deal with alone, and it's not something that you should have to hide because you feel ashamed or you feel that people will judge you wrongly about that. That Bell Let's Talk Day is trying to help reduce the stigma behind it and get people talking about it. And like Luke said, David James, thanks for coming out with that story. It was powerful. It was hard to get through that whole video, but I'm glad you did it. And make sure you keep that conversation going, man.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't have anything else to talk about today, and I don't know if we want to try to loop anything in after that conversation.
No, that was a pretty heavy one, so I think we're good. I think we had a great show today. I want to thank you again, Daryl, for doing everything you do. And guys, remember, like, follow, subscribe. Like I say, every show, that little notification bell. If you don't see our posts, you'll get a notification. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Daryl has the links, everything down in the description below. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with this show for sure. I believe we'll have a guest. I don't know if we have one yet or not. We're trying to lock something down. I know we have something in the works. The After Dark will be back at some point in February, one of the weeks. Again, I'm not sure the direction of that show yet, but it'll be there. Thanks for everybody tuning in today live. If you were unable to catch the first part of the show and you're just hearing this, just don't forget that we're available on all podcast platforms. If you listen to it in the car, or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all the major podcast forums. And this video will be posted live or right on YouTube right after the show, and I believe it'll be posted on Facebook if you're willing to watch it again or want to watch it, or it'll be out there for you. I guess that's it for today. And guys, until next time, I hope that all your shots are touchers.